Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back once again with another of my investigations, and before we get into it again, I've yet another small announcement to make. Since I've been asked, the behind the scenes stuff for people who donate at the $5 level for my Patreon includes anything that I think they'll find interesting, so I'll be doing little making of videos and photos of whatever I have on my whiteboard when I first come up with the idea for a video, that kind of thing. It's not much, but it's the best that I can do for now. Anyway, now to the topic of tonight's video. So this video is going to be dealing with Gawker Media and the legal fracas that they find themselves embroiled in, as well as some of their dealings in other countries. So one of the stories that has been everywhere of late is the court case of Gawker Media versus Hulk Hogan. This is a trial with many implications. There are certainly implications for how far the press are allowed to go in obtaining a story, and also implications about what is and isn't newsworthy that will arise from it, as well as implications for the financial position of Gawker themselves if Hulk Hogan is found in favour of for a large settlement. But before we can get into the trial, we need to get into the background of who Gawker are and what Gawker do. So according to reliable sources, Gawker Media is an online blog network founded in 2002 by Nick Denton. It was initially incorporated in Hungary for tax purposes, but later on was incorporated by a holding company in the money laundering capital of the world, the Cayman Islands. The site was run out of its owner/founder Nick Denton's apartment in New York for several years before moving to its current headquarters in Manhattan. The website consists of a main blog, Gawker, which currently deals with politics, but which was formerly primarily a gossip blog focusing on New York, its two defunct subsidiaries, Valleywag, a Silicon Valley gossip blog, and Defamer, a celebrity gossip blog, Kotaku, their famous or rather infamous video game and Eastern culture blog, Jezebel, their female-oriented entertainment/feminist blog, Lifehacker, their productivity blog, Gizmodo, their gadget blog, Deadspin, their sports blog, and Jalopnik, their automotive/car culture blog. As a network, Gawker's modus operandi is generally to take a tabloid approach to news media and to essentially let the writers on their network write whatever they want as long as it falls according to their founder's philosophy of is it true and is it interesting. The traditional obligation of a reporter to limit the harm of their reporting is basically completely disregarded in favor of full coverage. This has led to Gawker uncovering some very big and very important stories in their day. For example, their leaking of emails between the Atlantic's politics editor and one of Hillary Clinton's top aides sheds important light on the relationship between politics and the press, and there is no doubt that this kind of work is important and couldn't really be done by any outlet with too big a ties to the establishment. However, Gawker's freewheeling approach to taking on any true story that they happen to come across has got them into a lot of trouble over the years. Just a simple search of the website Scoop, which shows you the current cases against a company, shows that Gawker has been the defendant in 5 federal court cases lodged in the last 12 months, not including the Hulk Hogan one. Clearly lawsuits are something which Gawker is well used to by now. Anyway, now we can move the discussion forward to a brief history of the controversy surrounding Gawker over the years. I'm going to do these in roughly chronological order, ending with the Hulk Hogan trial, which is currently underway. So in 2009, entrepreneur and Bilderberg Group steering committee member Peter Thiel came under fire from Gawker in a piece about how totally gay he was, and the piece even named his boyfriend. Needless to say, he wasn't happy. In 2010, they published a piece by an anonymous author, which was essentially a tell-all about Christine O'Donnell, someone who was campaigning for the Delaware seat that year. The person in question claimed to have slept with her in the same bed, but he didn't have sex with her, and the piece was full of lurid sexual details nevertheless. This piece was also criticized by the National Organization for Women, which accused it of slut-shaming. Meanwhile, Nick Denton, Gawker's founder, defended the piece as quote-unquote brilliant packaging. In 2013, they were sued in a labor dispute with a bunch of former staffers who were classified as interns, allegedly to avoid paying them wages in an attempt to keep their costs costs low. In 2014, they were responsible for leaking the script for Quentin Tarantino's most recent film, The Hateful Eight. In response to this, Tarantino threatened to sue Gawker and to not make the film at all, but ultimately this didn't come to fruition and the film was released as planned in late 2015. In 2015, Gawker released another tell-all expose, this time of Condé Nast, who own Ars Technica, Wired, Nestle and Reddit's CFO's sex life. They claimed that he was secretly gay despite having a wife and that he tried to solicit sex from a gay porn star / escort. This caused massive waves, which caused the article to be pulled by Nick Denton himself, which of course caused a wave of resignations at the company because a lot of people felt that Gawker were betraying their values by deleting an article, and the ultimate shift of Gawker from being a gossip blog to being a politics blog. Also in 2015, one of Gawker's subsidiaries, Kotaku, released a piece entitled A Price of Games Journalism. In this piece, Kotaku's editor-in-chief, Stephen Totilo, lays out that Kotaku has been essentially blacklisted by Bethesda and Ubisoft. This was ostensibly over Kotaku leaking the script of Fallout 4's opening scene, a game which nobody knew even existed at that point. And of course leaking some details about the new Assassin's Creed as well. How sorry to feel for them is entirely up to you. This brings us to 2016, smack bang into the current disaster facing the company, the Hulk Hogan lawsuit. So here's a basic outline of the facts surrounding the case. The full court documents and other descriptions of the case are down below if you want, as well as raw videos of the trial. So, in 2012, Gawker published an article entitled, "Even for a minute, watching Hulk Hogan have sex in a canopy bed is not safe for work, but watch it anyway." This article, penned by former editor AJ Delurio, included snippets of a sex tape including Hulk Hogan, aka Terry Bollea, and Heather Clem, the wife of one of Hogan's friends, Bubba the Love Sponge, who is a radio host in the US. The article also included commentary and descriptions of what was in the video. There is a third person heard in the tape, allegedly Bubba himself, giving Hogan permission to have sex with his wife. Hulk Hogan claims that he was being secretly filmed and that this is a violation of his right to privacy. Gawker's defense, on the other hand, is on the grounds of free speech and the newsworthiness of the footage, and he's suing Gawker for roughly $100 million in damages. Now, as I said it before, this is a trial with many implications for Gawker itself and the future of online tabloid journalism. What is quite interesting though is how Gawker have been preparing for the Hulk Hogan trial, and also what the effects of a large settlement in Hogan's favour would mean for the company's future. So before we get deeper into this, there are two events that affect Gawker Media as a business entity that we need to talk about. So the first event is the January 2016 sellout of a quote-unquote minority share of stock to Columbus Nova Technology Partners, a Russian private equity firm owned by Russian billionaire Viktor Vekelsberg, which specializes in tech investments. Now, the purported purpose of this buyout was to expand the business as well as to shore up their finances for their legal battle with Hogan. What is interesting though is that Columbus Nova aren't just silent partners in the firm. As part of the deal, their managing director Jason Epstein now sits as part of Gawker's board. In fact, according to their new corporate charter, which was unearthed by Politico Media, Gawker will not be able to do any of the following without Columbus Nova's consent: approve an annual budget, hire or fire Gawker's executive officers and senior members of management, raise an executive's pay by more than 30%, enter into new lines of business, or sell the company for an amount less than $100 million. So it's pretty clear that whatever chunk of Gawker the firm bought, it was substantial enough to maintain a pretty decent degree of control of the company. The second event is a court case, in particular their court case against the Nautilus Insurance Company in 2015. The gist is that Gawker was told by the insurer that they were not going to be covered for the cost of the trial under their general liability insurance. This led to both Gawker and Nautilus lodging competing lawsuits, which were ultimately settled in March 2015, where they both dropped their claims with prejudice. And although the details of the settlement weren't made public, it is still very unlikely that Gawker are covered for any damages resulting from the Hulk Hogan trial, so one of their safety nets is is gone. Anyway, from these two events it's clear that Gawker are bracing themselves for the potential impact of what a ruling in Hogan's favour may bring. All of this though brings us around to a relatively inconspicuous little UK-based company, Greenmount Creek Limited, or as it was known before the 4th of March 2016, Gawker Media Limited. Now before we move forward, it's worth noting that different countries have different reporting requirements for private companies. In most jurisdictions like the US or the Cayman Islands for example, private companies are just that. Private. They have no obligation to report their financials to the public, and there is scant information on a company like this besides the registered address and who the directors are and all that kind of thing. The UK on the other hand requires all private companies to file certain paperwork online, and so once again we have a bunch of documents to play with. So before we get into the financial stuff, let's look at the directors of this company and where it is based out of, and of course some other sundry details. So firstly the basics. Greenmount Creek Limited, formerly Gawker Media Limited, is a non-trading, i.e. it doesn't sell goods or services, limited liability company founded on the 31st of May 2013, shortly after it became apparent that Hulk Hogan was going to sue them in the US. The company's director was initially a US-based lawyer by the name of John Duncan, who is a registered attorney in California as well as being an investor in Gawker, according to his angel.co page. His tenure as director came to an end in November 2013 when he resigned and two new directors came on board, Nick Denton's sister Eva Rebecca Denton, and funnily enough, a photographer by the name of Adrian Wilhelm Weinbrech. I have thus far been unable to tie him to either of the Dentons, and so I'm going to assume that he's a friend of them. Now what's interesting is the listed business premises, and no, I did not just dox a registered business. 11 Oak Hill Avenue, London. This is interesting because firstly it's clearly a residential house in a pricey part of London, and secondly it's the listed business address of several other companies owned by Adrian Weinbrech. So it's a good guess that he owns the property and is just letting Gawker use it for business purposes. This is compounded by the fact that according to their financial statements, Rebecca Denton signed off on them and is the controlling party of the company for the Denton family, and she owns 100% of the shares in the shell company. Anyway, we can now move on to the most relevant and interesting document we have filed online, their 3-page abbreviated accounts for the year 2015, filed in February 2016. Now the difficulty in analysing these accounts comes from the fact that they are abbreviated. It's best to remember that we're dealing with a foreign shell company tied to companies in the US and in the Cayman Islands that we have absolutely no clue about. Also, because of UK reporting laws, only assets and liabilities are available here, and there's no income statement or cash flow statement to show us where the money is going. But nevertheless, there are a number of curious things about what you find on the financial statements. Now the first thing that is kind of strange is that the company is running at a £300,000 loss in its profit and loss account. What makes this weird is that this company, as I said before, is non-trading. So what are they spending the money that they don't have on? I speculate that these could be interest payments on the loan that I'll mention later, but so far none of the math is adding up on that. So that's the first weird thing. Now I'm not saying that this is absolutely anything shady, and we don't have an income statement that shows anything untoward, but it's still an interesting point to bring up. The second thing however is far larger. Not only is this a shell company, but it's also a holding company, and what it's holding is 26% of Gawker Media's Cayman Island holding company, Gawker Media Group, which in turn holds all of Gawker's offshore assets. This comprises of 234,000 shares valued at 6,793,548 British pounds, which is listed as their only fixed assets. In fact, it's their only asset besides the £100 that they have at the bank. Now this figure possibly tells us a few things. Firstly, if 26% is worth around £7 million, then the company would have to be worth around £24 million or $48 million US, give or take, in total. And so basically they're in big trouble if Hulk Hogan gets even half of the $100 million US that he is asking for. Another point, though this is once again quite small and speculation, is that 26% is a very specific number in this case. Why? Because 25% plus 26% equals 51%, i.e. a controlling stake in the company. And so speculatively, if Nick Denton had 25% and his sister is holding another 26%, then we get a much bigger idea of the chunk that was sold to the private equity firm, i.e. quite a lot. But as I said, this is just speculation. But things don't truly get a little weird until you note this: a liability for the full amount of Gawker capital that the company holds. There are a number of weird things about this one. Firstly, the liability is issued in loan notes, which are kind of like a big IOU given legal form, which were issued in October 2013. Remember, this company changed directors in the following month that year. Something about the timing there just seems uncanny. The other thing is the terms of the loan. These are 3% unsecured loan notes that are payable by 2028 and were issued by the company. The rate of return at 3% is around the same as the general mortgage rate in 2014-2013, but doesn't represent a hell of an investment return, especially not considering the risk of lending money to a shell company whose parent company is under the gun of an impending lawsuit. Not only this, but the fact is that the loan's unsecured, so there's no collateral here over the one asset that this company holds, i.e. the Gawker stock. So how is this going to be repaid? And what about an even simpler question? Who lent them the money in the first place? These questions have really stumped me for a few weeks now. None of the related companies show a loan of this size on their books, and so I'm basically vexed. One thing is for sure though, the loan is accruing interest at a steady rate and will be at something like £10 million by the time it is due to be repaid, which might not even be a problem if Hulk Hogan decides to take his suit over to the UK and try and grab their assets there. But it's at this point that I'm pretty much plumb out of answers. We have a non-trading offshore company which holds a decent proportion of Gawker's stock and has a huge loan that it's issued to someone to pay them back for the investment. Who that is remains a mystery, and without more information it's difficult to do anything more than just draw the public's attention to the company and the fact that its records are out there for people to look at. The only thing that tells me that there is something to it at the bottom of the story is that Gawker had to decide to change the name of the company in an obvious attempt to hide it. That alone says there's some meat on this bone. Otherwise, what are they so afraid of? I've been Dangerous Analysis. Thank you to all of my subscribers and patrons, and as always,
good night and good luck.